What is up, Jamily? This is JamiroFan 2000 here with yet another episode of JamiroFan Talks About. Of course, this is my discussionary series taking a hard look at the past, present, and future of JamiroQuai, and they're now over 28 years of music making. And this episode of JamiroFan Talks About, unlike the last couple episodes that kind of strayed a little bit away from JamiroQuai, this episode is going to be talking about the early JamiroQuai, and I'm talking about the young JamiroQuai of the early 90s. A fellow JamiroQuai fan and collector, a good friend of mine from the Jamily over on Facebook by the name of Andy, made a very interesting discovery. Now, a couple episodes way back, probably several months ago, I noted the discovery by a few JamiroQuai collector fans of a 5-track Impulse Records vinyl test pressing, which featured what would end up becoming the official single B-side track list for ultimately the Acid Jazz Records, and of course later on the Sony Music Records first single release from JamiroQuai in 1992/1993 of When You Gonna Learn. Well, the discovery that was recently made by my friend Andy sheds a little bit more light on what could be a potential 8-track demo tape from a young JamiroQuai that was self-produced by JK apparently sometime in the middle of 1992. Well, the discovery my friend Andy made was a Revolver distribution info sheet from 1992. Basically, the info sheet was a sheet that was distributed to music retailers to hype up specific artists or upcoming music from very hotly tipped new artists coming up in the music scene. And given JamiroQuai came out of the gate with a lot of amazing promise, it was no surprise that this Revolver sheet would come out before, but the info sheet is from the era of when JamiroQuai had just signed to Acid Jazz Records, which of course was a London indie label since the 70s, and was the first record label that JamiroQuai officially signed to before less than a few months later signing an unprecedented 8-album deal with Sony Music, leaving Acid Jazz Records. Well, this info sheet does mention in its typography that JamiroQuai had based off a 8-track demo tape. So there was no tape companion with this or a vinyl record with the actual content of that 8-track demo tape, but that info sheet did allude to a potential 8-track demo tape that was the deciding factor by Acid Jazz Records in signing a young JamiroQuai, or the band JamiroQuai, back in the middle of 1992. And also there were also some very interesting little details in that info sheet from Revolver Distribution from 1992, basically showing a different expected release date for that first single for JamiroQuai, for When You're Gonna Learn / Too Young to Die. And originally, the sheet does note original release date of that When You're Gonna Learn single from Acid Jazz Records in London and early 1992, but ultimately would end up coming out later in September of 1992 from Acid Jazz Records. But the interesting thing is many members of the Jamily, especially in the collecting side of the Jamily, thought that the pre-mentioned 5-track vinyl test pressing that was discovered back in mid to late 2018 was the first real demo from JamiroQuai. But since this Revolver distribution sheet came out, or at least got discovered, it appears there could be a potential 8-track demo that predates that 5-track that 5-track vinyl test pressing that was released out to A&R and music distributors. So, but there we did get in a me and Andy and a few other JamiroQuai fans got on Facebook, got in a greater discussion about this development, at least concerning the early JamiroQuai and what could have been their first demo. But I did point out that I did talk about this in the JamiroQuai Minute and many other videos here on my channel in the past. But if you remember back to 1992, a UK DJ by the name of Giles Peterson, he was a DJ who had a radio show on Kiss FM British radio. He, in 1992, I believe it was in early to mid, the original demo that he had played was aired 2 times, I believe, on his radio show in the year of 1992. But if you go on YouTube and look up Giles Peterson, there was a demo that Giles Peterson played on his radio show on Kiss FM on British radio in 1992, which sounds completely different from any of the demos or any of the B-side material that will ultimately end up being released on the Acid Jazz Records and the first Sony single release from JamiroQuai for When You're Gonna Learn / Too Young to Die. And the demo that Giles Peterson played, I made the speculative thought that the single that he played, since it's so completely, starkly different from all of the single material, B-side material that was released ultimately on the Acid Jazz Records and the Sony Music single release for When You're Gonna Learn, completely different from that, giving it sounds a little bit more raw, and JK's vocals sound much younger than what you hear on the later first single material that was released. That track that Giles Peterson played in 1992, I believe at least 2 times on his radio show on Kiss FM on British radio, that demo he played could be one, and I do say one, of the B-sides that could have been emanated from the original 8-track demo that is noted originally in that Revolver distribution info sheet that my friend Andy found and just recently let the other members of the Jamily know about. Now, I did reach out to Giles Peterson on Twitter, sending him a 4-part tweet, trying to be at least as detailed as I can, asking him if he remembers the origin of that JamiroQuai demo that he played on his radio show in 1992. I have yet to get a reply back from Giles Peterson on Twitter, but if I do get a answer back from him very soon, I will definitely pass it here on JamiroFan Talks About, or maybe a future episode of the JamiroQuai Minute. But this does, as I said, this discovery by my friend Andy and this Revolver distribution sheet is very interesting, and definitely casts a light on what could potentially be the real first demo that JamiroQuai as a band didn't officially release, but came out in a promo capacity for music distributors, A&R, and other record label people. Now, if you want to see this distribution sheet for yourself, I have started a bit of a discussion post on a sticky post on the JamiroQuai subreddit talking about this very sheet discovery, and of course I did put up pictures of the original 5-track Impulse Records vinyl test pressing of When You're Gonna Learn, which of course that would end up becoming the, you might say, the blueprint for the later single releases of When You're Gonna Learn on Acid Jazz Records and Sony Music as the first official release from JamiroQuai. And if you want to see all these before mentioned, the Revolver distribution sheet from 1992 with all the information, and of course I made an IMGUR album of that other mentioned 5-track Impulse Records vinyl test pressing vinyl. I put all that in that post on the JamiroQuai server, but if you want a little more ease and want to see it all, I'm going to put links to the IMGUR album of the Impulse Records of vinyl test pressing and pictures of that and all of its paperwork, and a picture of that new Revolver distribution sheet from 1992 graciously donated by my friend Andy from over on Facebook on the description of this video down below, so be sure to check that all out. And I have been putting up updates on that summary post, or I should say discussion post, that I've been doing on the JamiroQuai subreddit in regards to this distribution sheet. So if any more updates come out, like I get an answer from Giles Peterson on Twitter when he's able to reply back to me, I'll be sure to pass it on in that post, and as I said, in a future video here on the JamiroFan 2000 YouTube channel. So a bit of exciting times when it comes to JamiroQuai history and redefinitions of known moments in JamiroQuai history, especially when it comes to musicography. This is really exciting because we get to see and hear brand new parts of history that are yet to be discovered. But I'd like to send a big thank you to my friend Andy over on Facebook for providing this Revolver distribution sheet, and having an amazing discussion and looking more into details of the information sheet and all the little extra pieces of information for that. So be sure to check out everything down in the description of this video down below, and go to the JamiroQuai subreddit, check out the post I have sticky on the subreddit. And as always, this is JamiroFan 2000, and I'll see you again really soon with another JamiroFan Talks About, many more JamiroQuai Minute episodes, and many more JamiroQuai related videos here on the JamiroFan 2000 YouTube channel. Bye-bye, everybody.